Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, Freedomizers. So happy for you to join us on this beautiful, beautiful, beautiful Saturday afternoon. We should have a very interesting show. I've been looking forward to having this guest back for quite a while. And so I'm gonna play one quick clip, and we're gonna get straight to it. So hang in there, Freedomizers. Hopefully this clip will be amusing, at least to some people, I hope. It's kind of disturbing in a lot of many ways, so hang on.
Of life. Now, to something completely disconnected. Where are 1% of American adults?
Oh, I imagine we could find out, couldn't we? We could use Google Earth, because some of them are quite big.
There's one.
He's got his own postcode.
1% of the population, which is what's the population?
300 million, isn't it?
So you're talking about between 2.5 and 3 million, say?
Jail.
Yes. G for jail. English spelling of jail, of course, but it is G for jail.
Really, that many people? 3 million people are locked up.
Well, 2.3, which is 1 in every 99.1 adults.
All of those guys there are innocent as well, because they all were arrested for having switchblades, but they've all only got one arm.
Proportionally, Americans prison more than twice as many as South Africans, more than 3 times as many as the Iranians, more than 6 times as many as the Chinese. No society in history has imprisoned more of its citizens than the United States of America.
We're doing pretty well, though, don't we? We stopped the European League.
We're ahead of China, Turkey, and India.
Yes.
Yeah, with 148 prisoners per 100,000.
It's the 3 strikes and they're out.
That's been the problem, yeah.
I mean, a legal system based on baseball just seems bizarre.
Yeah.
What do we do? We seem to understand the law. It's all very complicated. What's simple? What do people like? Baseball. Right then.
Here's the rules. 3 strikes and you're out, yeah.
Mental.
What it means is if the first 2 strikes, the first 2 crimes you're convicted of are serious enough, the third one, no matter how trivial, will get a life sentence, 25 years or more. So, for example, Leandro Andrade is serving 2 consecutive 25-year terms for shoplifting 9 videotapes.
He took 9?
Yes. Kevin Webber, 26 years for stealing 4 chocolate chip cookies. It's astonishing.
It's really stupid, isn't it? Because you know you're on this sort of deal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. That is the idea. Do another murder. Do a bank job. There's no point.
There's no point doing anything trivial. No, I know.
Get caught.
It is a bit bonkers. But the racial numbers are a bit worrying. And the gender numbers, it's 1 in 30 men aged 20 to 34 is behind bars. But for black males, that's 1 in 9. 1 in 9. There are more 17-year-old black people in jail than in college. You know. So 5% of the world are Americans, 25% of all prisoners
Isn't the real
are Americans.
controversy with this the business end of it?
Well, that's true. It's also, as you say, rightly, it is a business.
And it's not just license plates, they make loads of stuff.
Well, one of the things I should have said when talking about contraband is that you're not allowed to bring into America anything that's been made by forced labor or prisons. But in America, you could almost say, if you were so minded, that they've reinvented the slave trade. They produce, for example, 100% of all military helmets, ammunition belts, bulletproof vests, ID tags and other items in uniform, 93% of domestically produced paints, 36% of home appliances, 21% of office furniture, which allows the United States to compete with factories in Mexico because, of course, obviously the workers can't refuse to work for 25 cents an hour.
I'd very much like to say something hilarious, but something must be done.
It is.
It's a bit more question timing to say.
It is a bit amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, extraordinary.
Yeah.
It's slavery by the back door.
Exactly, isn't it?
Which is another video that I've got.
All right. Well, hey, I'm joined by Frank Richardson. I hope you enjoyed that clip. I actually found this last week, and I thought it'd be a good entry into our nice little appearance together.
Oh, you know what? That was incredible. That was a great clip.
Very much so. Well, for those that are joining us, of course, we've got people coming in through the Freedomizer Radio website, through the Blog Talk Radio, and any guests logged in under the chat room. It just takes, like, literally 5 seconds to fill out, like, a username real fast, password. That's all they require, and you can join us in the chat room, too, as well. But we're joined now by Frank Richardson. He is an author, well, among other things, of a great book that I highly suggest everybody take the opportunity to at least browse through for the simple reason it could have a major benefit on your daily life, especially in the current situation we find ourselves here in this nation. But he has written a book called Police the Arresting Truth. Now, you're also, like, you have a company now, right? Pacific Security Intelligence?
Yes, that's right, Nikki. And I wanted to thank you for having me back on your show. I had such a blast last time. And you'll have to excuse me, I have a little bit of a cold, so there may be a few coughing fits along the way, but I should be able to speak clearly most of the time.
Awesome. I think one of our main founder here, Proof Negative from Nevada as well, you know? He's
Right.
having the same issue for like a week straight, just
Yeah,
breaking out coughing.
It has struck the West Coast. Just, you know, everybody's sick, and it's not serious, but it's lingering and just an annoyance. Yeah, so I do have a company, and I do a couple of other things too, and companies in California and Nevada where we're licensed private investigators and security consultants, and we do a lot of background clearance and stuff like that. But that clip, I wanted to talk about that clip. Can we talk about that clip for a little bit?
Yeah, let's go for it.
You know, it is amazing in this country that we take the use of drugs so seriously and punish those people, you know, just so severely. When they're talking about these third strike and you're out type programs, most of those folks who are in there are either for selling or using drugs. That's a large percent of the population, and that's not where they need to go. And particularly with the use of marijuana, where we came really close to legalizing it in California this last year, there is no reason for those people to go to jail or to go to prison. If you want to send them to a rehab program because it's affecting their daily life, do that. But they just don't belong in the prison system. And it is a shame that our country wastes so many resources, both law enforcement, corrections, and everything else on such a petty crime.
That's exactly the case. I mean, they have support groups and help for people that are gamblers. You know, you've got Gamblers Anonymous and everything else. So, you know, and you don't see people being put in prison for gambling issues. But
no, you don't see them really unless they harm someone else. And you know, that should be the caveat with everything. If you're hurting other people, well, then we have to do something with you because you can't continue to do that. But even DUIs. You know, DUIs are treated with sometimes 2 days of community service and fines, and many states have, upped the charges and upped the sentencing. But compared to the possession or sales of marijuana or use of marijuana, there seems to be a significant difference in how we approach those two types of crimes. Alcohol's okay, which creates a lot of violence. And I can tell you from experience that I rarely have to fight with people who are under the influence of marijuana, but definitely when they're under the influence of alcohol. And they're
exactly,
two
but
different
it's considered, what, a level 1 drug, right?
Yeah, it's a Schedule 1 drug because it doesn't, according to the federal government, since they started their campaigning against it back in the 50s, it doesn't have any medical value. And we all know that's not true. And yet they continue to go down that path and continue to withhold federal funding and harass states that aren't willing to follow their game plan. And it's unacceptable. We have to change that approach because we don't need that many people in prisons, and we certainly don't need them in prisons because of their drug use.
It is insane. And like you said, most concerts I've ever been to, if it's a nice, what they call stoner music, there's nobody up fighting. There's no. If you throw in a bunch of alcohol and liquor, and then you'll get the big mosh pits and people starting fires. But
I like to use this example, which is somewhat hilarious. If you're chasing somebody who's under the influence and they're driving away from you in a patrol car, they usually are driving erratically and unsafely, and they just have reckless disregard for other people's lives. Now, I sat behind a guy twice through 2 red lights who was under the influence of marijuana because he was afraid to cross the intersection. And so that's the big difference. He was paranoid that he might hit somebody, and he wasn't sure of himself, so he sat there twice as the light changed. And I'm like, what's going on with this guy? He says, well, I wasn't sure. You'll never see somebody drunk do that. They'll go through that light in a second. So there's a big difference between the two. It's hilarious in my opinion.
Same with stop signs. If you're stoned, you'll stop at a stop sign and think you're waiting for the light to turn green, and
right.
It's crazy. I've seen it. Probably been
really
a victim of it myself a couple times, but hey.
Sure. You know what though? You're extra careful. You don't have to worry because you're like, boy, that car looks like it's really close. I better wait for that one to go by. Okay, I'm going to wait for the next one. You can be there for hours. But, you know, you never see people who are under the influence of alcohol. They're always aggressive. And if they're not aggressive, they can't pay attention to what they're doing. And, you know, more often when you don't go into homes because of violence with marijuana use, you go in there because there's alcohol abuse. And so if you're going to go to a domestic battery or domestic violence situation, it's usually because there's alcohol involved. And yet we seem to ignore that in our society and persecute people who use other types of drugs who don't seem to have that level of aggression tied to them.
Well, yeah, you can overdose quite easily on many prescription antidepressants, but now they have the whole cheese thing, so you get heroin mixed with, again, Tylenol PM, which is insane because I've seen it with so many people here. It's just crazy. And all of this due to our deciding what's right and wrong for other people in other countries, because we brought back the whole heroin trade to Afghanistan because it was pretty much gone. So
yeah, it's interesting. If someone were to spend a lot of time digging into who's paying for what and what's being funded, and you know how it's being funded through back channels, we might have a real eye-opener. You know, we give money away to a lot of countries, and we support their military programs in the Middle East and other places like Afghanistan, and they produce a tremendous amount of drugs in that country, unabated, and ship them here. So it's really an interesting topic, and unfortunately, I'm not educated enough about that particular part of this topic to, you know, speak, you know, from experience or anything. But I can tell you, from a street level, and from here in this country, what people do with drugs and alcohol, you wonder why they're going to prison for marijuana use or sales of marijuana. It just doesn't make any sense.
it very much does not. But like you said, what was so weird about that whole clip was the very end is the amount of things that are being made by the prison workforce. And the military, like they set up, 100% of military helmets? And that just right there just totally floored me. That's insane. And that's the only way they can compete is by keeping a larger population. And so you're throwing all these nonviolent criminals into a serious element that they are probably totally unequipped for and have had no experience of in their entire life, to go into a situation in which most people that have committed serious crimes are pretty much used to that kind of lifestyle around them, because that's the kind of people they tend to, associate with. So that's kind of, more acceptable. But you throw this nonviolent element into a situation where, it's, and what's so bad is when they get there, it pretty much changes their whole life at that point. I mean, completely. There is no more calm, nice person after that.
No one comes out of prison reformed. And that whole concept is based on an 1860s approach, a puritanical approach to separating people, putting them in cells, and letting them reflect on the bad things they've done. Well, it drove most of them crazy back in the 1800s. But we haven't gone much past that original concept. We still house them in cells and still pretty much leave them alone for that time period or up to their own devices, and we expect a positive outcome, which to me is stupidity. You can't expect people to reform if you throw them into a gladiator arena and say, here's your knife, go fend for yourself. We're not doing anybody any favors.
Exactly. I saw quite a few scary stories that have come up recently about the privately owned prison systems, thinking that would make for a more cost-effective measure for the individual communities. But I've seen like several clips where they basically, the guards just sit there, totally back away, walk away, won't open the door or anything else, and they let, I guess it was a snitch going on, telling the cooperation between the drugs coming in through the guards and everything else, and so they just let him do that because it was privately owned and there was nothing that could be done, and it was just like, whoa.
Yeah, and you see, that's an interesting concept you bring up there, and a lot of the stuff that I touch on in my book is, what can you do when the government infringes upon your rights, your First Amendment rights, your Fourth Amendment rights, your Eighth Amendment rights? You have a lot of rights when it comes to the government, but you don't have those rights when it comes to the private citizens. And so how do you address those abuses? And I think the government may have had a a pretty good idea of how they could get rid of some of that liability and circumvent some of our civil rights by giving these private prisons the opportunity to abuse people's rights.
And speaking of that, there's someone that would love to chime in on this. I'm going to bring in Uncle Buck real quick. I'm sure this just totally got his ears going right now. So, hi, Uncle Buck.
Hi, Uncle Buck.
Hey, guys, I hope I don't lose your terrible cell phone area, but I got stopped last night at Colorado Port of Entry, okay? And they said, bring all your permits inside. I said, okay, I'm a long-haul trucker. I'm my own trucking company. Anyway, I go in there, and I got California base plates on my truck. Well, every year California's behind because of all the people that are laid off. They only work 4 days a week, so they give you a 30-day grace period. It says under your registration, law enforcement, please do not take any enforcement action. You know, this expires 11/30, November 30th, but not more than 30 days. So it's good until the end of the year. You pay for a year, just like when you license your car, okay? And it says, you know, don't take any enforcement action till, till the indicia, which is, Latin for, your stickers and your whatnot, can be gotten to you. So it always takes them a month. So I get in there, and the lady goes, first thing, open the door. I said, hello. She's in her black, Nazi uniform. She goes, registration, license plate, insurance, license, all the shebangs that we need as truckers. I mean, like barking orders, first thing. And I'm going, oh, this is going to be fun. So I hand her all my stuff. She goes, your registration's expired. And I said, well, ma'am, if you look at the bottom, it says it's a grace period of 30 days. It's the same way every year. And I go through this because California's broke. You can't get out the stuff. But you can see it says, please take no enforcement. She, I don't care what it says. And I go, okay. And then she says, well, you're not leaving here until you can show me that you paid California. I said, well, our registered agents, they got a few trucks. That won't be until Monday morning. Well, then you're going to stay here and sit here until Monday. And I said, okay, is there any way around this, right? Hello?
Yep, I'm listening.
Okay. So she goes, okay, I've never known the cell phone signal. Anyway, she goes, well, I guess after about an hour of arguing with this lady, and doing it very quietly, very, showing courtesy, and she's a bitch. And I said, okay. So she said, I guess I can give you a ticket. And so I said, okay, well, that'd be fine. I'll take the ticket to the judge, and he can read the bottom of the registration, and it'll be like, you're out of here. Yeah, and so she hands me the ticket, and it says there's a $25 surcharge for blood DNA bank. And I'm in Colorado, and I said, what is this blood DNA bank? Anybody in Colorado that's given a citation has to fund our program $25 to draw anyone that's arrested for a felony's blood.
Wow.
And I said, what? That's what I said. And I said, and there's a bunch of truckers waiting behind me. And I said, that's crazy. I said, so if you get arrested, the cop is judge and jury? There's no due process? I said, what if they later decide it wasn't a felony and you take it to court and it was a misdemeanor or an infraction? And then you've already had a surgical procedure and your blood taken from you. I said, it violates the Fourth Amendment. I said, do you know what the Fourth Amendment is? Yes, I do. And I said, and? I just know what it is. She didn't know.
Of course
and
not.
I'm like, yeah. And I'm like, I am not paying $25 to violate other people's Fourth Amendment. But you either sign here or we're calling an officer out to the scale. And I'm like, okay, I'll see you in court. I signed for it. But here you go. They're taking people's blood, and you're having to pay for it in your ticket that you get, whether if it's your windshield wipers don't work.
Wow, that's a state that I would really like to avoid driving through. I had never heard that before. How did the legislators get that through?
I'll fax it to you. Yeah, I'd love to. Yeah. I'm like blown away.
That is something. But the other thing, there's a deeper issue here. You're being abused by a public servant because of her attitude, and you summed it up when you said, I was trying everything I could to be nice to her and calm her down. Like,
yes,
that's your job. She's supposed to be the professional. She's the one that's supposed to know how to behave. And more importantly, when a police officer or a government representative starts infringing upon your First Amendment rights, that's your happiness and your ability to feel safe and secure, then they are operating outside of their policy and their training, and that sets them up for that Title 42, 1983 complaint, which is a civil code.
Ooh,
Very
I got to
serious.
write that down. Nick,
Yeah.
write that down.
Yes, say that one more time.
It's called Title 42, 1983, and it's called Oppression Under Color of Law, and it's the one U.S. code that law enforcement is terrified of. All government officials are, because the minute they don't behave the way they were trained, or they try to do something that's illegal, like give you a ticket for something that's not a violation of the law, well, they've violated your civil rights because they're infringing upon your First Amendment happiness. Now, I'm not an attorney. I'm not a federal attorney, but I know how to investigate these type of complaints because I've done them many, many times as an internal affairs commander. It is the single most powerful tool that the citizens have against their government, and it's a violation of First Amendment.
I'm going to get that from Nick. And then she charged me $70 for a portion sticker to go 36 miles through Colorado, and I'm already apportioned for that state. And I'm like, I said, I paid fees for the year. I'm allowed to go through here. I paid my road taxes on top of that. Well, your registration expired at $70, and then, you're using a credit card? Oh, well, there's a charge on that, too. So I was held hostage.
I don't believe that they can charge on a Visa credit card. You might want to check with your bank, but I think the federal government doesn't allow them to tack their fee on, that it has to be borne by either the provider who's using the Visa card or the person or the Visa card company itself. They can't pass it on to you, and I think that's a federal law, federal banking law. I run into that all the time because we process Visa for my company, and we're not allowed to charge any fees because Visa doesn't allow you to pass that on to the consumer, and it's because of the federal government. So here's my thing.
Okay, go ahead, sorry.
I think that this is a absolute citizen's complaint, because now if you write that citizen's complaint up and you send it in and you say, I'd like a response with regard to why I was arrested, and basically a citation is in lieu of an arrest for a crime that I didn't commit by your representative, because you were not in violation, and they issued a citation. A citation is an arrest. You're just promising to show up in court. And there's evidence of that, because she said, if you don't sign this, I will have an officer come and take you to jail. So she forced you, made an arrest on something that's not arrestable, which is a violation of your Fourth Amendment and your First Amendment. Their policy doesn't support that. And you have to actually go back and make a formal citizen's complaint. If they fail to address it appropriately, well, then the command staff there is in big trouble, because they have a duty to protect your rights.
Yeah, I mean, I got to that scale for years and years, and every year California is a 30-day grace period. Never had a problem, and this lady was like, I mean, the other drivers are looking at me like, oh, my gosh. And then I said, and because I was on camera, so I made sure I had a lot of courtesy, and I said, would you mind please giving me your supervisor's card, please? Oh, she was mad.
Yeah, of course, she was terrified.
Yeah, and I said, thank you very much. Yeah. And I mean, she was, and other drivers, they were like, oh, my gosh, take your blood? I said, guys, you better wake up. I said, this is, like, unbelievable. And they go, you're right. You're right. And I said, can you imagine that? So I just want to share my story.
You know what? That is a really good story, and I hope you follow through with a complaint, because it's our duty as those who have control to control these abusive law enforcement officials. That is why I wrote my book, because at the beginning of every chapter, there is a cheat sheet. So you can look at it and say, oh, this is a traffic stop. This is what I need to do. This is a DUI. This is what I need to do. This is an interview. This is what I need to do to have a positive outcome and win this confrontation with the police. It's important for us to gain control and possibly push through police reform. We can't have bullies with badges affecting our rights to run freely across this country. And that's what happened.
I agree, sir, and I talked to Nickie, and I interviewed a couple different police officers this week out in Dallas, Fort Worth, dropping off Christmas trees. They were in the parking lot giving people tickets. Mm-hmm. I asked them, I said, with respect, and da-da-da, I said, sir, do you know what the Fourth Amendment is? One was a sheriff, and one was a captain, and neither of them could tell me what the Fourth Amendment was.
That is a shame. But you know what?
Oh.
In addition to that search and seizure amendment, that Eighth Amendment, the cruel and unusual punishment, and the First Amendment, the right to freedom and happiness in pursuit of your life without infringement by the government is critical. Once they've made that First Amendment, they move on to the Fourth. The Fourth is usually, in my opinion, the second abuse against your rights during a contact. The first is that they're messing with your very right to live free in this country, followed by that Fourth Amendment search and seizure. And many of them don't. There's some gray areas where they don't understand, which I addressed in my book too. The search and seizure, every American should understand their rights when it comes to that. And they need to read that amendment and understand what case law applies.
And what is the name of your book?
It's Police, The Arresting Truth. It's available at Amazon. You can download it from Kindle onto your computer. No Kindle device needed. And I always tell people, print out that first page of the chapter so that you can take it with you. And if you do run into trouble, you know how to handle that outcome. You don't get into a yelling match, or you don't make the wrong decision, which is going to affect you. Because we know that when police get their backs against the wall sometimes, just like this lady you talked about, she got angry. That's not anger. That's fear, because she knows she's stepping outside of her authority and she's abusing your rights. And the fear translates into anger, but that's why she behaved that way.
Yeah, and I stopped into the Utah Port of Entry this morning, and I showed them, and they said, well, yeah. And then I showed them my ticket. They were like, can she read?
Yeah.
And I was, so, oh, man, this is great news. So my First Amendment was violated in my pursuit of being secure as a human being in my happiness.
Yeah,
wow.
And not only that, but you took abuse from her. You took bullying from her. And that's the problem.
Yes, I did. I was like, I'm Officer Sullivan. You lick boots. We don't question. You lick boots.
Yeah.
It was that attitude.
It's unfortunate, but that's a lot of the approach that we're seeing out there by unskilled officers who don't know how to handle themselves or their jobs. And the first thing they do when you question their authority is become hostile. And that hostility is based in fear, because they know they're getting outside into deeper water where they don't know how to react. They don't understand their job, and they don't have enough job knowledge to carry them through successfully. So they start berating you on a traffic stop and telling you don't have a right to question me, and you don't have this, you don't have that. Well, of course you do. You're a citizen, and you do it politely, and you do it friendly. But the bottom line is they work for us, and if they violate our rights, somebody needs to address it.
Well, Monday morning I was talking to the commander of that post. It's funny, it says, Port of Entry,
Yes.
What? Is he breaking up?
Yeah, he's driving through, wait, we almost hear you, Uncle Buck.
Are you there?
I think we might have lost him there.
And here's another thing I want to bring up, Nikki. In my book, I also cover an affecting citizen's complaint, and he said he's going to be calling that commander. And don't ever just call. Write a short note, make that complaint formal, and make sure they get back to you, because it's too easy for them when you call to say, I'm going to take care of this, and then hang up the phone and do nothing. Meanwhile, that abusive employee continues to go unchallenged by anybody out in the public. We can't have that. We have to take control of these people so they don't hurt someone.
Very, very much so. And I actually posted a link. I found the Title 421983. I posted a link with the definition and everything else in the chat room. Mm-hmm. And I'm about to pull up the link to the Amazon for the Kindle download for anybody who wishes to do that. And I actually have a Kindle on my desktop too, so you don't have to actually, like you said, you don't have to purchase a device at all, which is nice.
And you know what's nice about it is if you do buy any kind of self-help book, not just mine, but anyone's, if you want to take something out with you during the day, you hit the button and you print that page. And how handy is that? It's better than taking a whole book. I would never advise anybody to take my book into the field and then try to operate off of it while they're reading it with the law enforcement people standing there. It just is too much information at one time. But if you just take that front page and say, this is how I file a citizen's complaint, or this is how I handle myself at a traffic stop, then you should be able to stay out of trouble. And I also want to reiterate that it's never good to get into an argument with a law enforcement official. They have weapons on their belts. They're, always going to maintain that they're in the right. The best thing to do is get through the occasion like Uncle Buck did, and then go back and file that complaint with the facts and make them explain to you formally what really happened and why this person behaved that way.
Yeah, very much so, because if we all actually did that instead of, being a little afraid of confronting our police force, we still have to realize they're still people too.
They are people, and you know what? There's some great people out there in uniform, and if we could have more people like those who are conscientious, who went into the field with the thought that I'm going to help people who need help, whose goal is to be on scene when everything goes crazy and be that anchoring person who says, I'm here to help you, don't worry. We'd have a wonderful society. But the problem is we get lazy, slovenly, and bullish type people out there who get that job for the wrong reasons and then use their type of personality to abuse American citizens, and that's not okay. And there are more and more of them in the culture, and the culture changes. And then the department behaves a certain way, and it just becomes this snowball of poor behavior that we have to maintain control of. It's our job as citizens here to do it.
We all have responsibilities.
Yeah.
We're going to take a quick break real quick, do some quick ads that we need to do. We'll take a real short one. Again, we're here with Frank Richardson. We'll go into some more information since I had that thing pulled up. We'll talk about the society, and then I'll read that title off for people so they understand a little bit more, because it is pretty fascinating, and it's a good thing to actually know and have handy. So I love that. So hang on, Freedomizers. We'll be right back.
You are listening to Freedomizer Radio, where Freedomizers freedomize freedom.
All right, hey guys, we're actually back here with Frank Richardson. Let's see. Sorry, I was a little lost for a second. I was trying to read something. Sorry, I apologize.
That's okay. It's been one of those days with this cold where you lay awake at night and you don't sleep. And then you get up during the day and everything looks surreal, like it's not real. You haven't had that kind of sleep that you expect. So it's a weird day, and it's cloudy and cold out on the West Coast.
Yeah, it's nice and sunny. It's almost 70 degrees here and bright and beautiful outside. And everybody in my house is sick as well. And not only that, yeah, and I had the same weird night for me. I couldn't sleep, but I swear, like a cat jumped on my bed last night. It was odd, and I could feel it like jumping on there. And then this morning, like a little bitty kitten shows up on the balcony on the second floor of an apartment, at the door, meowing and crying like crazy, and it looks just like one of my old kittens that I dreamed about last night too. Wow. It's so odd.
That is odd. That's a message from somewhere. It's you have to take those things and say, okay, do I need this cat? What's the thing? What is it?
It was so weird. And then when Uncle Buck was talking about that story, and that just happened to him like yesterday, and I was wow, so it was like perfect timing on everything. It's been a very odd couple of days, and I know poor Proof, he's here in the chat room now. I know, like he's in Nevada as well, and I know he's been having that cough that just won't go away, and it seems like everybody seems to be having that, everywhere right now. It's kind of crazy.
It is crazy, and that cough is just enough of annoyance that it keeps you up at night, but not so much that you can't function during the day and get to work. It's one of those weird things that, won't go away. It's been probably a 2-week-long cold for me. Just keeps going and going.
Yeah, it mainly stays in the head. It's crazy.
Yeah, that thing about Uncle Buck, it really bothers me to see that kind of aggressive, abusive person in a position where they make people miserable. It offends me, particularly because I've investigated many of these people over the years, and I just can't believe as a society that we can't stop that. We're smart people here. We're creative. We have ways to get around these ignorant folks who refuse to learn their job or refuse to put the effort in. And yet here we are dealing with this person yesterday. It goes on and on and on.
We're not taught that we are very important or talented individuals at all anymore. We're basically just sent in front of a TV for amusement, and nobody really interacts or even has any true worth they feel inside. It's kind of scary situation, and most people, their whole lives are actually based on this like SimCity thing,
Yep.
unrealistic life that they either have on the computer or through different people's lives that they watch on, American Idol every night.
Well, you said something last time when we were on the radio that really resonated with me, and that is, we are responsible for raising our children as intelligent and successful human beings to really be creative and think. And it's why I live in a mountain community, because we don't have the influences that you have in the city. And my children are out walking in the woods and hiking and just getting out in nature all the time. That in its very self stops them from sitting in front of the TV and having the society suck their brains out as we watch them on the couch,
Exactly, and nobody seems to realize the whole programming issue, because that's that word for a reason. It's not just, they didn't just come up with the word programming and throw it out there. It's on purpose.
Well, you only have to watch the different news stations to get a clear signal on, what we're being spoon-fed and how it's coming to us. And, there's, here, watch over here while we're doing this. That type of thing goes on all the time. And you wonder why most people don't see that. Maybe I'm cynical. That's what I've thought all of my life because of seeing government corruption and seeing people abuse their authority. I don't trust anybody. And so I believe that it's our duty to question all the time. Well, why are they saying that? What's in it for them? Those are the things that we have to teach our children to do too. And my children have been taught to be respectful to government officials, but to always hold people accountable, whether it's their teachers, whether it's,
But you don't hold them in any higher regard than you do yourself or somebody, your neighbor, because they are not any higher and they're not any lower. They're still a person.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And when they understand that, it's it does create sometimes a little bit of friction because they challenge occasionally, and I want them to, and, they don't toe the line. They have that rule of where they like to have that 70% of the students get through the school without creating any fuss for the teacher. Well, I think those 30% are the ones that are really, going to be able to affect change because they're not following that company-fed garbage that they get every day.
Yeah, it's kind of scary. I've been talking about this my last couple of shows has been just trying to get the whole food issue, just for the simple reason because, if you control your food, then you actually have control of your health. And if you have control of your health, then you have control of your life. And if you have control of your life, then no one else can. But it's a really big deal, and it just takes simple, small steps if you get control of your immediate environment. And that's just something simple. It doesn't take, running out and making sure that everybody's, got their lawns cut at exactly a half an inch. Or
Right. You know what the other thing is you bring up this food, and obviously I'm not any kind of, I don't study this topic very much, but those BPAs that are coming out of the plastic and creating high levels of estrogen in people, and people continue to consume these plastic products at high levels, you wonder that the evidence is out there, but it's not widely known, and there hasn't been a real push to make people quit using the plastics that are poisoning them and poisoning the environment. And you wonder, is this just another form of financial control? Is it cheaper, so we're not going to learn how to save our lives? It's a weird system.
It really is, because it seems like with the food thing, they don't want really anybody to grow any food, unless it's totally controlled and genetically modified, so it lacks nutrients. And, now they want to outlaw vitamins because, again, they have no medical benefit,
right.
And the FDA can't regulate them, so let's take away something else that could keep us healthy and in good standing and maybe strong enough to unite and stand forward when, the suppression seems to get stronger. And maybe we could start actually going back and realizing that our communities are our own, and we need to reformat the way things are done and go back to the old ways where the police and the people that monitored your area actually came from that area. They had a vested interest as opposed to being disconnected, which is what they do now.
Yes, it's true. And part of that is that community policing profile or concept that we talked about during the last interview. If we returned to where we forced our police agencies to become community providers, and they were transparent in everything that they did, and the officers lived in the community, which is part of that whole program, we would have such better control over our law enforcement from a perspective of, what do we want them to do for us? How do we want them to affect our neighborhood? And police moved away from that because they could see then it was too transparent. It would give the public too much insight into what really goes on day to day, and they didn't want that. So when they saw the opportunity to jump on this terrorism by policing program, which came out after 2001, they all jumped on that bandwagon. Federal funds were available, and they started becoming more militaristic than community-friendly. And boy, we really missed the boat, because if we could have made that move in the 90s and stuck with it, we would have an entirely different police community today.
Yeah, that's what I remember. I remember as a kid actually going to the local fire department and everything, and every time they would kick out, or if we had extra cookies, whatever, we were always, actually interacting with the people that were in your neighborhood. They even had playground in the back of the fire department, where the kids could actually have the neighborhood could come play, and it was fenced in, so they would watch. And it's yeah, now you can't do that because it's a danger for the kids.
and not only that, but there's also this, when they do community events now, it doesn't seem like they're really doing it with their heart anymore. It's an assignment. And you'll see the police show up with their cool stickers, and occasionally you'll get a really talented officer that really loves that. But for the most part, it's like, okay, who's up to go to the community program? You're assigned to it. You have to go for 8 hours. And that's not a way to affect anybody. You really need to buy into that, commit to it, and then do it the way it's supposed to be done, and not just as a perfunctory duty.
Very awesome. We have another caller that wants to chime in, if you don't mind.
Oh, no, not at all.
All right, perfect. Looks like one angry Jew is with us.
Well, I dropped into the conversation when you were talking about how to address the people down in Washington. And I cringe when I hear people call them lawmakers. I equally cringe when they are given any kind of lofty title, because and they've become, that's what I teach my son as to what they are. They're pirates, because that's what they do. They steal from everybody. There's only one or two people down there, Ron Paul, and coming up, I guess, Rand Paul, and maybe one or two more that I would even consider decent human beings. I think these are loathsome creatures that feed off of the American people that put them there. And they were never supposed to live there, never supposed to be there for 10 years or 20 years, or how long have some of them been there, 50 years? It just amazes me. Is the gentleman who's talking, is he a policeman? Is he... Is this the part of the show where you're talking about don't talk to the police?
Yes, that's right.
Okay. I don't know if you're aware. I have a 3.5-year-old, and I will teach my son that unless it's an emergency, unless he has a limb that's barely hanging on, never call the police, that he should never have any contact with the police. Because I have seen all too often in too many situations where the police are called for absolutely legitimate reasons. And as they get involved, you find them either tasering a woman, taking children out of the house. There was some poor guy in New Jersey, who was moving I don't know, I guess last year sometime. And he was moving from his mother's house to northern Jersey. He had come from Colorado. He had 2 handguns in his duffel bag, which he was transporting properly to northern Jersey, where he was going to live. He's in jail for 7 years. All because Mommy called the police because he made a comment that life might not be worth living. Mommy was a social worker.
Oh, no.
So she called the cops. The story that I never heard was how they ended up searching his vehicle. And I'm going to ask you, and I'm not even really aware of who you are with the show description. Are you aware of there's a video on YouTube. It's about 25 minutes long, and it's Professor Dwayne, I forget if that's his name, but he's a law professor who speaks to his first-year law students about why you should not talk to the police.
Yes, I am familiar with that.
Is that the most fantastic video you've ever seen?
It absolutely, when I wrote my book, it was 7 years ago. I actually wrote it in 99 and published in 2003. And I have a whole chapter dedicated to an interview and interrogation. And the main theme is never talk to the police don't talk to the police, don't invite the police into your house, and never go to the station to talk to the police. And I exposed some of the tricks that police use to get people to come in and talk to them. Everything from, oh, just come down to the station and tell us, your side of the story, and everything will be fine. And it is never, just like this professor, and I just saw him about 3 months ago. He nails it right on the head. You have no business talking to police, and that's because police a lot of times will do what's called a subjective investigation. And they'll already decide before they get to where they're going, oh, that guy's a bad guy. He must have done it. So then they start building their case around this poor guy. And if the guy slips up and gives them a couple of, makes a few mistakes in what he's saying because he's nervous or whatever the reason is, they're going to lock in on that and turn that into a case. And
that's exactly right.
Yeah.
His name is James Duane. He's I'm reading off of the YouTube thing. He's a professor at Regent Law School. But I took that video and I sent that video to everybody that I knew, clients, customers, friends.
Mm-hmm.
And I told them, I said, if you have children who are driving or are just learning to drive, you sit them down and you make them watch this, and make them watch it twice if you have to.
Right.
But you make sure that they understand the danger that they in by driving a car and just being out in traveling in this country.
Yes.
Because and it's amazing how many of my friends never bothered to do that and think it's a joke, or you'll get the people that'll tell you that you got nothing to worry about if you get nothing to hide. Those are the people that really deserve a good smack with a wiffle ball bat until they come to their senses.
Well, it's true, and there's another chapter that I cover this, and this one is probably the most important one. The traffic stop is the one reason most people will come in contact with police in their lifetime, when they get pulled over. And this chapter, I bullet pointed about 15 items, if I remember correctly, that you should do at a traffic stop to make sure it comes out in your favor. And I even kind of bullet point why they're going to pull you over and how fast you need to be going over the speed limit to get pulled over. Just a couple things. But it is important that when you are stopped, that you're no nonsense. They have certain laws that they can use against you when they pull you over. For example, duty to behave, to follow the signal of a peace officer at a traffic stop. Those are critical. So you have to do certain things like provide that license and that registration. You don't have to let them search your car. You don't have to tell them your life history, and you just need to get through it without creating confrontation. If there's an issue later on, that's when you address it, but never give them a reason to become physical or aggressive.
Well, you don't even have to be driving to be stopped or to be confronted by them.
Mm-hmm.
Let me ask you, are you aware of Barry Cooper?
No, I'm not.
You may want to write that name down, because Barry Cooper is an ex-DEA agent.
Mm-hmm.
Barry arrested hundreds and hundreds of people. He now says that he has put hundreds of people in jail that never should have been there.
Oh, I am familiar with this. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Barry runs a program, and it caught my eye last night because I subscribed to his videos on YouTube. Mm-hmm. And one of the videos that just popped up was the Barry Cam. And I think I'm going to buy one, and I'll tell you why. Barry is a smart guy. He's kind of, some of his videos are very funny to watch. Mm-hmm. But Barry likes to bust dirty cops.
Oh, me too. That's what I'm in business to do. So.
Well, you got to go and you got to take a look at this Barry Cam, because what he has created, check this out, is a camera with a hypersensitive microphone that doesn't look like a camera. It looks like a key. And he's been taking it around and doing videos of him taking it into courthouses, getting it past courthouses, taking it through TSA, going through the X-ray scanners, and nobody knows what it is. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So it's going through the X-ray scanners, but I guess whatever the electronics inside, it looks like any electronics that you might see in a that might have unlocking mechanisms and anti-theft. And I'm looking at the video that he's taking with this thing. It's fantastic, and it's not even something that if somebody picked up and took from you that they could, one, turn off, and two, turn on. They don't even know that it's a camera. They don't even know it's running. That's the beauty of it.
That is beautiful. That is perfect for contacts or traffic stops, because every one of those should be taped. And they tape you, and it's only fair that you are able to get your side of the story out, because you're never going to get that police tape in your hands unless the judge allows it. They just don't give them up. And,
and even if you do, they're going to doctor it.
That's right. And if it's extreme case, I can tell you that they'll lose them accidentally. So, I mean, you're never going to get a fair shake by just allowing the government to videotape you on a traffic stop. You need to provide your own evidence, and that's obviously in my book, too, because that's one of the critical things is no one's going to believe you until you have it on tape. And then
Are you also covering this phenomenon of not being able to videotape public officials or anybody on the street? I watched this sort of spread from England over here. It was more over in England, where they anybody with a camera, they just stop you, and they want everything else, but they've just sort of picked up the pace.
Now there's a East Coast state where they had a man was pulled over and he audio taped the
Maryland.
Yeah, Maryland. That's it. And then the U.S. District Court said yes, that he can't do that. He can't do that. It's not okay to tape that particular peace officer on a public roadway. Now, thank goodness the West Coast isn't like that yet, but we have to fight against that. That is your right. You're in a public place, which has always been ruled appropriate for taping. You're on a roadway. The officer is able to provide his half of the evidence on video and audio. Who in their right mind would believe it is acceptable for a citizen not to be able to tape a peace officer's action? That is just criminal.
Well, I believe that was overturned. I believe that they did finally come out and say, absolutely, he had a right to, in a public venue, in a public place, he had a right to tape that.
Don't you agree that the problem with this is, though, it was introduced, and then it'll keep getting introduced until somebody can try to push it through in some form. And when we allow that kind of behavior, particularly with our peace officers, they just hammer it down until they get some form of what they like in that control, and then it becomes a problem for all of us, and we can't have that. You know,
but let me address something you just said. I don't think we don't have peace officers anymore. We have law enforcement officials.
Well, that's true.
And even the name officials. How do we? And this goes back to this referring to the people in Washington, D.C. See, if I refer to them as pirates, it's pretty clear to you what they are, right?
Yes.
But if I refer to them as officials, as an example, that gives them a higher status than you and me. And certainly they're not
deserving. Put off options, right? Because that sounds so much better.
Say that again?
It's like saying put off options, right? It's just a better way of putting it. I mean, it's what they did with the cops. They went from blue uniforms to black. Their squad cars changed. I mean, they can come out now almost completely in guns drawn, just because they can't see your hands at the moment. And it's little statutes that keep getting passed, and they automatically assuming that that's the way it is, even though it totally violates anything that's in the Constitution. And it's just a matter of the fact that we're being separated and we're being divided and we're being shown that everybody's different, and that's okay. But I mean, I'm sure Frank could go on about profiling and everything else that alone is
right.
We could go on forever.
Well, let me add one more thing to what you just said. When you mention the Constitution, what comes to mind?
Me personally?
Yes.
Besides the Bill of Rights, just that's
why doesn't the Constitution where you were born or where you live come to mind?
Well, I'm in Texas, and it really does here, because, I mean, I can tell you every flag that's been up here, and, big Southern, I mean, we believe in the Republic and individual state rights here, so, I mean.
I'm in Pennsylvania. You want to see a bulletproof Constitution? You want to see a Constitution that has some teeth in it, right? Don't ever forget that the Pennsylvania Constitution created that federal Constitution. And I think that we also, in our speech, give much too much credence to the federal Constitution. But I'm standing here in Pennsylvania I'm not in the United States of America. My feet are on the ground in Pennsylvania. And Pennsylvania law applies here. And to allow federal law or to allow people to believe that federal law takes precedence over state law when I'm standing in the state is perpetuating this problem. And it is absolutely a battle of semantics as much as anything else. I think you'll all agree with that, right?
I do agree with that, and I also agree with states' laws and the federal government taking their nose out of that state's particular rights and ability to run their local community's needs. The federal government should never be able to step in and say, oh, California, you can't do this, or Nevada, you can't do that. That's not their business, and they shouldn't, but you're right, they've been pushing that, and they've been pushing it harder and harder. They're pushing for national police academies so they can get everybody on board, and in my opinion, eventually push to a national police force. That would be the worst thing that could happen to the United States. Each state losing its own control over its local community. And it just
But this is the fault of the pirates who are at the state level, who allow this to take place, who allow these agreements to take place between the state and the federal government. Pennsylvania years ago tried to put forth a law that would give any federal law enforcement officer with a badge and a gun local law enforcement authority within the state of Pennsylvania. In fact, I should be careful. We're not a state of Pennsylvania. We are the Pennsylvania Commonwealth. We are not a state.
True.
So, but they tried to give anybody, and that could have been anybody. That could have been some IRS guy with a badge and a gun. And if he didn't like something that you did on the road, can you imagine what those guys do day to day if they had policing authority in the state?
Oh, my God.
What a mess that would be. But this is the kind of stuff that they're trying to do all over the United States, and it has to be stopped at the local level. And while you may think that it's disrespectful to call these people pirates, that's what they are. In fact, if you'd like to debate me, try to debate me as to why they're not pirates.
Well, I don't think it's possible. I think your position is well supported, and I think we're all getting tired of them taking the handouts and running the government so that they can enrich themselves and enrich big business. We're all
and
getting
ignore
tired.
everybody else that's here, and knowing that the people they're using to make their agenda come to be are also just common people as well. Well, hey, guys, it's 3 o'clock, so what we're going to do is I'm going to play a quick song, and or maybe I'll play that clip again, because I know a lot of people have joined us since then, and we'll, caller, if you want to hang in and come back, that's cool. I'm going to put you on mute for now.
Sure.
And then, Frank, before we do this, you want to just go over real quick, like some of your background, I guess, credentials so that they understand where you're coming from a little bit more?
Sure, absolutely. Well, I'm a retired deputy police chief from the state of Nevada, and I've had the opportunity to work in just about every specialized assignment that there is, but most notably, one of the ones that left the most lasting impression was the internal affairs commander position, where I got to see the other side of the coin and watch some of these people who I thought were wonderful people out just really acting like animals to people they were serving. And so from there, I've had the opportunity to run a couple corporations. Now I own a couple companies in several states where we do investigations and security consulting, and we do take on criminal defense work and civil work where First Amendment rights have been violated. I'm particularly working on 3 cases right now which were very similar to the gentleman's story, where they were calling in and asking for help from the police. The police showed up and then arrested them.
That is amazing. Yeah, I always love when I get a chance to talk to you, so I look forward to this. So for everybody listening, we got another hour. We're going to bring that in. I'm going to put you on mute real quick, Frank, and we'll go through a quick song or maybe the clip again, and then we'll come right back at it.
Sounds good.
Perfect. Okay, Freedomizers, hold on. I think I'm just going to go ahead and play that clip for sure. I know a lot of people did miss it because it was at the very beginning, but it is just one of those sobering facts and realizations, but at least it's done in a comical way, and it isn't done by an American, so I guess, it's a little bit easier to swallow. But here you go, Freedomizers.
Of life. Now, to something completely disconnected. Where are 1% of American adults?
Oh, I imagine we could find out, couldn't we? We could use Google Earth, because some of them are quite big.
Here's one.
Got his own postcode.
1% of the population, which is what the population is.
300 million, isn't it?
So you're talking about between 2.5 and 3 million, say.
Jail.
Yes. G for jail. English spelling of jail, of course, but it is G for jail.
Really, that many people? 3 million people are locked up.
Well, 2.3, which is 1 in every 99.1 adults.
All of those guys there are innocent as well, because they all were arrested for having switchblades, but they've all only got one arm.
Proportionally, Americans are taking more than twice as many as South Africans, more than 3 times as many as the Iranians, more than 6 times as many as the Chinese. No society in history has imprisoned more of its citizens than the United States of America.
We're doing pretty well, though, don't we? We sort of got the European League.
We're ahead of China, Turkey, and India.
Yes.
Yeah, with 148 prisoners per 100,000.
It's the 3 strikes and they're out.
That's been the problem, yeah.
I mean, a legal system based on baseball just seems bizarre.
Yeah.
What we do really seem to understand the law. It's all very complicated. What's simple? What do people like? Baseball. Right then.
Here's the rule. 3 strikes and you're out, yeah.
Mental.
What it means is if the first 2 strikes, the first 2 crimes you're convicted of are serious enough, the third one, no matter how trivial, will get a life sentence, 25 years or more. So, for example, Leandro Andrade is serving 2 consecutive 25-year terms for shoplifting 9 videotapes. Or,
He took 9?
yes. Kevin Webber, 26 years for stealing 4 chocolate chip cookies. It's astonishing.
It's really stupid, isn't it? Because you know you're on this sort of deal.
Yeah.
Yes. That is the idea. Do another murder. Do a bank job. There's no point.
There's no point doing anything trivial.
You're
No, I
going to
know.
get caught.
It is a bit bonkers. But the racial numbers are a bit worrying. And the gender numbers, it's 1 in 13 men aged 20 to 34 is behind bars. But for black males, that's 1 in 9. 1 in 9. There are more 17-year-old black people in jail than in college. So 5% of the world are American, 25% of all prisoners
Isn't the real
are American.
controversy with this the business end of it?
Well, that's true. It's also, as you say, rightly, it is a business.
And it's not just license plates, they make loads of stuff.
Well, one of the things I should have said when talking about contraband is that you're not allowed to bring into America anything that's been made by forced labor or prisons. But in America, you could almost say, if you were so minded, that they've reinvented the slave trade. They produce, for example, 100% of all military helmets, ammunition belts, bulletproof vests, ID tags and other items of uniform, 93% of domestically produced paints, 36% of home appliances, 21% of office furniture, which allows the United States to compete with factories in Mexico because, of course, obviously the workers can't refuse to work for 25 cents
I mean,
an hour.
I'd very much like to say something hilarious, but something must be done.
It is.
It feels a bit more question-timey to say.
It is a bit amazing, isn't it?
Yeah. Extraordinary.
Yeah.
It's slavery by the back door.
Exactly, isn't it?
Which is another video that I've got.
If you're in prison, is there an incentive for you to work?
You get solitary confinement if you refuse to work. Yeah, more than 1 in 100 American adults are in jail.
The whole system that we live in drills into us that we're powerless, that we're weak, that our society is evil, that it's crowd-ridden, etc., and so forth. It's all a big, fat lie. We are powerful, beautiful, extraordinary. There is no reason why we cannot understand who we truly are, where we are going. There is no reason why the average individual cannot be fully empowered. We are incredibly powerful beings.
Now, I think I spent 30 years of my life, the first 30, trying to become something. I want to become good at things. I want to become good at tennis. I want to become good at school and grades and everything I kind of viewed in that perspective. I'm not okay the way I am, but if I got good at things, I realized that I had the game wrong. The game was to find out what I already was. Find out what I already was.
Now, in our culture, we've been trained for individual differences to stand out. So you look at each person, immediately it is brighter, dumber, older, younger, richer, poorer, and we make all these dimensional distinctions, put them in categories and treat them that way. And we get so that we only see others as separate from ourselves in the ways in which they're separate. And one of the dramatic characteristics of experience is being with another person and suddenly seeing the ways in which they are like you, not different from you, and experiencing the fact that that which is essence in you and which is essence in me is indeed one. The understanding that there is no other. It is all one. And I wasn't born Richard Albert. I was just born as a human being. And then I learned this whole business of who I am and whether I'm good or bad or achieving or not. All that's learned along the way.
The old appeals to racial, sexual, and religious chauvinism, to rabid nationalist fervor, are beginning not to work. A new consciousness is developing which sees the Earth as a single organism and recognizes that an organism at war with itself is doomed.
Okay, Freedomizers, we're back, and bringing back in Frank. I apologize for that little delay, but that's my new opening that I decided to go with for my Rise Above Dehumanization segment. So
I really enjoyed that. That was almost Native American-ish. You know, the concept that everybody belongs to one planet, one Earth, you know, one people, and that we're not separate. And I think it was like Chief Seattle or something that said you can't separate yourself from the Earth and other people. It was really great. I enjoyed it.
Awesome. Yeah, especially after such, something that can be a little depressing. It's always nice to realize that there is still hope. And
it doesn't have to be depressing though, because if you use just a few tools, you can act positively, affect an outcome, so that it doesn't haunt you when you go home. You don't get mad and say, "Boy, that guy was mean," or "He treated me terrible," or "Now I have to go to court." And so, if we take a little responsibility and educate ourselves, particularly when it comes to the law, confidence is key in affecting any outcome. And if you're confident and you know your rights, you're almost never going to be taken advantage of.
Very much so. Hold on, baby. Yeah, 30 more minutes. So he's just going to stay outside, and yeah, you know how it goes with kids.
I have little ones, that's right. So I understand.
30 minutes, baby, like I said. Yeah, which is fun. He's been at home with me, and it's actually been, and it takes a little bit of sacrifice if you want to do something that's right for your family or right for the world around you or your community or even your neighbors. It may take a little bit of sacrifice and a little bit of, willing to give up the fact that we don't need car payments. You don't absolutely need two of them on top of that. People used to buy things with the money they had as opposed to going into debt, including their homes. People first bought land and went on from there. And yet we're so confused that we want to believe that we'll have a house built by somebody else's specs that's totally against, what we truly wanted in life, and say that it's okay because I spent all this money and look, I can show off to the neighbor.
Oh, you know what the worst thing about that is we don't realize we're being enslaved to the banks. When we take out loans and buy things with credit cards and buy cars on credit, when you do that, you're saying, boy, I'm going to go to work for this bank for the next 6 years or the next 30 years. And that's no way to handle anything. In the last couple of years, I've gone to a strictly cash operation. I never want to owe anybody again because that forces me to work in ways that I don't want to.
Exactly.
And the work I take on now is usually if someone comes to me, particularly in the states where I'm licensed, and says, I have this case It involves police abuse, or it involves school abuse, because I handle a lot of school district. I was a deputy police chief at a school district police department too, in addition to law enforcement. So I will take those cases because I want to affect the outcome for those people. And generally speaking, you don't get paid a lot for those cases, and sometimes you never get paid because they never come to fruition. They actually never win their suit. And so you go in knowing that you have time to do it because you don't have a lot of debt, and you can affect the outcome of how those people's lives are going to end up, and that's important.
Yeah, very much so, especially when you know the laws in your area, like here in Texas. Of course, I looked all this up before, like, even though my son's only 4, but he's doing quite well. He can write his own name. He can recognizing letters all by himself. Won't even have to give an example. I love it. Right. So, you know, we work hard, and it doesn't take much. But here in Texas, like, if your child is not registered at all before, you know, they don't have to actually register with the homeschool if they have never been registered. So you never even have to bring them into the eyes of the quote-unquote officials. So, but I think here, like, there was some lawyers here in Arlington, which is like 20 minutes away from where I am now. They took a case all the way up to, I believe, if it didn't go all the way to the federal Supreme Court, it at least made it to Texas Supreme Court. And it was stated that here, like, a private or a homeschool qualified the same as a private school. And there's not much they could do. And I've always been told, you know, if somebody like CPS or truancy or anything else comes to the door, you, again, don't answer. You know, that's the thing. If somebody knocks, everybody feels that they absolutely have to answer the door.
Right, right. And you should never let anybody into your house. I don't care if they're wearing a uniform or they're, you know, selling cookies. They should never be invited over that doorstep unless they're a close friend or family. I can never understand why people would invite other people into their homes. And it's a striking concept when you say to them, don't answer the door. Well, I have to answer the door. I can't not answer the door. It's like the phone, right? You know, you can ignore the phone sometimes, but you always have to answer the door. Why is that true? You know, and so, you know, it's part of that whole thing about not talking to the police or not talking to any official. When is it ever in your best interest to talk to someone? Never. And so don't invite them into your house because you don't need them to gather additional damning evidence, like you left the eggs out or, you know, there's a cloth on the sink that looks unsanitary. Who knows how far they're going to take it? And one case that comes to mind that happened in your state, I think, is when the parents took pictures of their children in the bathtub.
Yes. Oh, there's been so many of these.
They took those children away from them because
they sent them to their grandparents or something on the email.
You talk about violations of your First Amendment rights. That person should have gone to prison. That CPS worker should have gone to prison. That is so abhorrent to the rest of the country that we can't even imagine how it happened. And it's an embarrassment to the people of the state of Texas that they have a government that is so out of control that they're abusing people's rights like that. We can't even fathom that in some places. And I have to say, I don't think it would happen out here, but I could be wrong, you know. It's terrible, terrible, you know.
It seriously is, and it's something that what's so bad is we're willing to accept. It's like, okay, if someone came to take your child, does it matter if it's a cop or not? I mean, I'm just saying, you know, why do we have this whole, like, mentality that they're completely separate and different than who we are? So, you know, it's just one of those, it's okay, it's the government, you know, now you can get molested as you go through TSA screener just because, hey, it's the government, it's okay, they can do it, then, you know.
Because we're afraid someone's going to blow up a plane. And the honest truth is that no one gets out of life alive. It's just one of those hazards of being alive. And if we're going to give up all of our rights to protect our lives for as long as we can, what kind of life is that, you know, for everybody that lives here? It's a terrible society when someone's spying on you constantly or someone is patting you down or searching your things. That's no way to live. It just isn't.
Exactly. It looks like we have a couple people that want to chime in again. So Uncle Buck's back. I'm going to bring him in and let him make a quick statement, and then I'm going to bring back One Angry Jew because he's still hands up too, so I guess he still wants to talk. So.
Well, you know what? He has a lot of good points, and he's obviously very educated in this particular field, so it's interesting to hear from him.
Cool. Well, Uncle Buck, I think you're here with us now.
Yeah, One Angry Jew was very, very good to listen to as well. I love this guest because it's, he's calm, he educates you. I'll definitely be getting your book. I like to read at night. And, it's just so educational and so important. I was wondering if you guys, because I couldn't hear the show on these back roads here, did you guys talk about the Texas thing where the babies were born and the Texas was having their
blood taken?
Yeah. Okay, you guys did talk about that?
No, but we
didn't talk about it, but I'm very familiar. It's terrible that we're giving up so many of these personal liberties, and we've got to stop that. It's just, I'm not sure what the solution is. We almost need a cultural revolution to address those type of infringements because they're sneaky and they don't come up and confront us. They're just kind of slipped in, and
seriously, because you become a danger to the child if you don't have it in the hospital or take it there shortly after, but you're destined to have to take the hepatitis B shot that they give them right away, and then they take their blood, and they don't even ask you. They don't even do anything. And even if you fill out that paperwork to get the child's, blood spots done, they have to throw the extra ones away. They've already used some of them, and they supposedly just have to destroy them. But now supposedly someone actually got out of the bank with several, I think, 100 spots of who knows how many kids, seriously. Wow. And nobody knows what happened or how they did it. But I'm going to bring in One Angry Jew, too, as well, because I think he's there, too. So your mic is on as well?
Yeah, I am. I didn't have anything really that I wanted to add to what was said. I just bought your book, Frank.
Oh, okay, great.
Well, when I saw it was easy, it was a download on Amazon. It was really a no-brainer. Look, I will share that information with friends. People are still of the mind that the government is good, and I think that I really think that if we change our speech, because anytime I hear somebody say, "Oh, well, we're going to return our democracy," I want to cringe.
Yeah.
Democracy and not republic. Everybody seems to confuse that.
Yeah.
But if we could, and I know that some people would say, no, we have to respect those people down in Washington. But if we could get the people, by and large, to really refer to them as what they are, which is pirates.
Yeah.
When they stop acting like pirates, I'll stop calling them pirates.
And I don't know about you, but when somebody says senator, the first thing that pops into my mind is a sleazy car salesman type person who's on the graph and having relations with, people all over the country. You never think of them in a positive way when you hear the word senator. It's a negative connotation.
I hope Rand Paul changes that. I don't know. I don't know how much trouble he's going to cause, but I assume he is going to cause a lot of trouble down there in the Senate. We are not being represented. We are being
controlled.
Well,
taking advantage of the right word. It's true.
I guess you're as controlled as you allow yourself to be controlled.
Well, that's because we're under the confusion that there's no intelligent people left in this society that would have the ability to do what our forefathers did. We're so taught that we are not amazing, awesome beings that have that ability, nor are we taught that we have even the mental capacity to do what they did. Yet I know many intelligent people that would do so much better and learn from the mistakes we've made in the past, but we're afraid to let go, and we don't have to completely get rid of the system we have now, but we can tell it's not working, but we're afraid to actually start over and trust the people that are here now because we've been taught that that's not possible. It has to be A or B, not knowing that A and B are both being controlled by the same international bankers, and whoever controls them is, it's just one scary...
Let's use the word you just said. We've been taught.
Exactly.
If we don't intercept, if we don't intervene in what our children are taught, we're going to have a class of people who will put people like you and me in prisons for what we believe, for what we think, what we know is true.
That's exactly right.
And let me interject. I heard Ron Paul the other day on Alex Jones, and he was saying he now fears for his safety as he gets into the same areas that Kennedy and, somebody else with the Federal Reserve and auditing Fort Knox. He said he's now fearing for his safety.
Wow. Well, I think he ought to be. I think he's probably correct.
I imagine, they'll assassinate him or his son. I totally agree with you, but you have a real congressman on there saying he's fearing for his safety for doing what we're supposed to do as Americans. That's wild.
Well, he's attacking the Fed, and in doing that, he's attacking the very people who run the country, which are the bankers.
No, you know what? Let me change, Frank. Let me change that word. He's not attacking them.
Mm-hmm.
Holding them accountable.
Oh, well, I meant it in a positive way, but I mean...
No, I know that, but you know what? But when even the use of the word attack will be misused by some people.
That's the truth.
But how would you misuse he's holding them accountable? Look, I'm a stickler for words.
Yes.
Yeah, like the audacity for hope. I mean,
very good speaker.
Right. I really believe that we have to change our vernacular. We've got to change the way we speak. That we have to be very careful what we say, and we have to be very careful what we teach.
And maybe have actually control of it as opposed to just trusting. You know, most people don't even spend time, even when it comes to daycare. There's been that whole, and this is common knowledge, you know, most people spend so much time picking out a car, and they spend no time deciding who's going to take care of their child. And it's like, what happened to, like, maybe not picking out the car and taking care of your own child? Actually having a little bit of sacrifice. And you know, what good things in life are easy, you know. Everybody has this idea of instant gratification, and they lack the idea, like books alone, besides just which, okay, I understand the whole e-file, and I know it's easy and everything else, but I'm very big about printing it up so you actually have it, and you actually have something, because I think that's another thing that's totally lost, and nobody understands the right words, or even truly what they mean, and the English language was designed to be a farce anyway, so we're already backwards in the meanings and the frequency and the vibration that all these words give off. So and now we have words like the audacity of hope, and that was like supposed to be such a positive book. And not alone, does anybody know what audacity means? That's like Uncle Buck. Do you know the Fourth Amendment?
Yeah.
Well, no, but let me address that for a second. If you watch Christine O'Donnell when she had that debate in the law school with that Chris Coons, the one that eventually won. I don't Christine O'Donnell for not knowing every amendment and which one goes with what. I only fault her for not having a copy of the Constitution with her that she could have pulled out of her pocket and said, well, hold on a second, Mr. Coons, let's read what it says. Because all those law students, I don't know if anybody knows even what I'm talking about, but she had questioned Coons about the First Amendment, and she was saying the First Amendment says the separation of church and state. Of course, it doesn't say anything about that. But all the law students laughed at her. They laughed at her. They don't even know.
I'll tell you what, guys. I've got a great thing I'm going to play, so I'm going to put Uncle Buck and One Angry Jew on hold real quick, or at least on mute. Y'all are still available, so, you know, I can pull you back in anytime, not a problem. But I don't know if you've heard this, Frank. I've actually got this little clip here. It's from Red Skeleton, believe it or not.
Oh, wow.
And it's actually him describing the pledge from when he was a kid and actually trying to give meaning to it. And this is, I love this whole clip, and it really, to me, this is one of those things, like when you hear it, this is one of the few things that actually makes me feel very much like I am proud to be an American. You know,
right.
If you actually, like, believe in what was originally written and not, you know, what we're confused to believe at this moment in time.
Right.
So I'm going to play that real quick. You know, I'm sure you might enjoy this. It was quite a nice find for me. And we'll see. And like I said, he describes every word individually, and it's just so well said. And I'm going to have to play first. There's a little pause at the beginning. So every time I do this, I think that I had uploaded it wrong or it just wouldn't play, but it has a little pause. So blah, blah, blah.
I remember a teacher that I had. Now, I went through the 7th grade. I went to the 7th grade. And I left home when I was 10 years old because I was hungry. I work in the summer. I go to school in the winter. But I had this one teacher. He was the principal of the Harrison School in Vincennes, Indiana. To me, this was the greatest teacher, a real sage of my time, anyhow. He had such wisdom. And we were all reciting the Pledge of Allegiance one day. And he walked over, this little old teacher, Mr. Laswell was his name. Mr. Laswell. And he says, I've been listening to you boys and girls recite the Pledge of Allegiance all semester, and it seems as though it's becoming monotonous to you. If I may I recite it and try to explain to you the meaning of each word. I, me, an individual, a committee of one, pledge. Dedicate all of my worldly goods to give without self-pity. Allegiance, my love and my devotion to the flag, our standard, oh glory, a symbol of freedom. Wherever she waves, there's respect, because your loyalty has given her a dignity that shouts freedom is everybody's job. United. That means that we have all come together. States, individual communities that have united into 48 great states. 48 individual communities with pride and dignity and purpose. All divided with imaginary boundaries, yet united to a common purpose. And that's love for country. And to the republic, a state in which sovereign power is invested in representatives chosen by the people to govern. And government is the people. And it's from the people to the leaders, not from the leaders to the people, for which it stands. One nation, meaning so blessed by God, indivisible, incapable of being divided, with liberty, which is freedom, the right of power to live one's own life without threats, fear, or some sort of retaliation. And justice, the principle or qualities of dealing fairly with others. For all, which means, boys and girls, it's as much your country as it is mine. And now, boys and girls, let me hear you recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Since I was a small boy, 2 states have been added to our country, and 2 words have been added to the Pledge of Allegiance, under God. Wouldn't it be a pity if someone said that is a prayer, and that would be eliminated from schools too?
All right. Well, I'm going to let Frank make a quick comment, and then we're going to take our half-hour break, and we'll be right back. And I think one Angry Jew said he had one more comment as well. So.
Okay, I just want to say very quickly, that was so appropriate, and I didn't even realize that existed. How old is that?
I'm really not sure.
Well, at the very end, if it would ever be taken out of the schools, boy, hit that right on the head. So.
Yeah, everything, and the definition of republic, and trying to let you realize the individual, and that it was from people to government.
You know, I mean, that was the critical point there. A free life without retaliation. Toward the end, he just understood what the pledge was about. Amazing.
Yeah, it is great. So we're going to take our quick half-hour break, play some ads, and then as I come back, I'll play my censored song, F the Fed, just for everybody who is here. All right, Freedomizers, you're back. Nickie here, and you're joining us as we try to rise above dehumanization, bringing Frank back in with us. Frank Richardson, of course, you wrote Police the Arresting Truth. And there's that little cough showing up. That's the first time you coughed.
I've been, you know what, I've been trying to keep it under wraps, but it just occasionally sneaks out.
Well, sadly, one Angry Jew said that he had to run for dinner and all, so he couldn't stick around to add his last comment. So sadly, I don't have that. But hey, That's okay.
He was actually, very well spoken on the subject, and obviously is a professional somewhere who's had a lot of experience, watching this type of government behavior. Had a lot of insight.
Yeah, and very much so. And I very much appreciate what he said when it came to our wording, and seriously what words are used, because
Right.
we become so confused and we allow little changes to happen. And I see it even in movies when it comes down to Greek mythology and the way they're slightly changing characters or the
Right.
stories in itself. And
Mm-hmm.
yet we're accepting it because now that's how people get their books. They don't read anymore.
They don't read anything, yeah, and it's a shame because even our media outlets, they give us the type of news they want us to hear, and I'm sure you do this too, if you have the opportunity, you look at news from other countries as it comes into our country, and you're like, wow, they have a completely different perspective on what's going on than we do. And it's so important to get everything there is out there before making a decision. And I have some friends who are either hardline in one way or very liberal on another, and we maintain our friendship because we are able to, discuss these things. We watch everything, and then we say, okay, this is what's really going on. And that's true when it comes to police work, too. I have some friends who are still in police work, and they, some of them didn't like this user's guide that I wrote because it gave away secrets that they use to get convictions or arrest people or whatever, and I was ostracized, and a couple of them even made threats. But others understand that it's knowledge, and knowledge is good for everybody. And for example, if you behave the right way at a traffic stop, you're not going to be shot because you scared the officer, or he's not going to drag you out of the car and beat you up because you offended him. And that's where this gentleman's idea about how words affect so much, he's absolutely right. The way that you talk to a peace officer, or let's call them law enforcement officials, as he did, because he is correct, it's going to affect the outcome of that contact, and it's so important that you speak, articulately, like you understand what you're talking about. You need to address the law from the perspective that you understand it, and it's going to affect your outcome.
Knowledge is always the key. We're confused to think that it's money and status because, the people with money and status don't see that as being the key to power. They got there through knowledge, and they use money just as a tool to confuse and use it as an illusion. Look this way, sleight of hand.
Well, you know what? And I should tell you, I worked for a billionaire software developer running his companies and also running a team that guarded his children, his 6 children. And they have no better grasp on the world or philosophy or how things apply than the average person. I think that sometimes that people believe, well, if I have all the money in the world, I'll be incredibly smart and I'll know what to do all the time. And they don't, As a matter of fact, those people were some of the most unhappy people I've ever met in my life. The money had taken up so much of their character and who they were that they didn't know how to behave themselves. And that's a shame.
Very, very much so. I did want to do this one real quick. I pulled up that title
42, 1983? Sure.
That one?
Yes.
Do you want me to go ahead and read this off so people can understand this a little bit?
Absolutely.
They have the title as Civil Action for Deprivation of Rights.
Right.
And this is what it says: every person who, under color of any statute, ordinance, regulation, custom, or usage of any state or territory or the District of Columbia, they actually added that, that's nice,
Yeah.
subjects or causes to be subjected any citizen of the United States or other person within the jurisdiction thereof for the deprivation of any rights, privileges, or immunities secured by the Constitution and laws shall be liable to the party injured in an action at law, suit in equity, or other proper proceeding for redress, except that in any action brought against a judicial officer for an act of omission taken in such officer's judicial capacity. Injunction relief shall not be granted unless a declaratory decree was violated or a declaratory relief was unavailable. For the purposes of this section, any act of Congress applicable exclusively to the District of Columbia shall be considered to be the statute of the District of Columbia. So you want to make that, I guess, coherent to the layman?
Yes, I do. And you know what? That is the civil portion of that particular statute. It also has a criminal portion. And so basically what it says that if anybody under the color of authority or under the color of law infringes upon your rights as an American citizen, they will be held accountable under that particular U.S. code, title, and section. And it is by far the most powerful tool that the citizen has against police abuse, against government, personal government abuse. There is nothing that scares them more if you say, listen, you are infringing upon my rights under Title 42, 1983. I can affect your personal livelihood and who you are as a person. It's so powerful, and I wish more people would understand it, because if you tell the internal affairs investigator, listen, this is a Title 42, 1983 issue, do we need to move up to the federal level to have your department investigate it? The first thing they're going to do is jump and understand that you know what your rights are, and they're going to investigate that case the way they're supposed to instead of sweeping it under the rug. And so it's powerful.
I'm going to ask you a question. I know this is totally unprepared or anything, but are you familiar with the use of all the gold-rimmed flags inside courtrooms today?
The use of what? I'm sorry?
Gold-rimmed flags, United States flags that are gold-rimmed.
No.
And do you know, basically what the gold-rimmed actually tells you? The first time this was used, I think they said, it was quite a while back. The only time any flag ever had a gold rim was when it was used during a court-martial or during a martial law. And now whenever you go into every single courtroom, all American flags today are now gold-rimmed, which basically states that when you walk in those courts and you actually do the oath instead of claiming common law, which basically people just don't think that anybody is above or below you. So when they tell you sit down and the judge isn't sitting down, you don't either, because they're no higher than you are. That's common law. We all are equal. That's the republic. That's what we were originally meant to be.
Right.
But yeah, they confuse us. So now they have these gold rim flags that basically say that once you go in and you actually accept and you sit down, then you're accepting, I guess, the straw man, and then you become under jurisdiction of martial law, which totally changes just about everything.
Wow. Now the big question is was that done intentionally, or was that done through the ignorance of local government officials who just don't know any better? And I say that only because I've seen so much incompetence, even at my level of government, that somebody might have said, wow, that looks really cool, let's get a gold rim flag. And so you just wonder whether if it is an intentional act, or they just thought, wow, those are so much prettier than the other flags. You wonder.
Yeah, and quietly pushed in.
And quietly pushed it in, and not understanding what the real meaning was that you brought up. And so, it would be horrific to find out that it was actually a conspiracy to eventually implement that type of authority and control. But we're seeing that anyway. We're seeing that with the Patriot Act, and we're seeing that with the ability to, track people's internet activity, and the ability to pay FBC money to, circumvent the warrant that they need to, track people. It continues, and the internet has become this wonderful thing that has drawn us all together and given us an ability to, address police abuse and government abuse and stand together, even through your programs. But it also is another way for the government to spy without limitation upon people, because the laws haven't quite caught up to the internet. And so
yeah, and they can't do anything, because you imagine the riots that would happen if they actually shut down that here in the U.S. now. They can't get us to respond for anything else but watch. Take away something like that.
Oh, because it's made us so much more intelligent. I mean, when you think about the information that was available to the average person in the 70s about their rights and the Constitution, you had to go to the library, you had to drive there, you had to sit down and pull the books, you had to read, you had to do your research. Now, if you have a question, you can immediately pop on the internet and get to the library. And people, I think, are really benefiting from it. People are so much smarter now. And we're just seeing this almost like cohesive community that's worldwide instead of just national.
Very much so. I've actually been noticing that. There's actually been a trend. More and more people I see are actually turning the TV off, which is awesome and absolutely amazing. Now, I haven't had one since, nothing plugged in since before the digital switch. I don't have a converter or anything else. And Right, and then okay, so for one point in time, I lost internet service for a couple of days, and I actually tried to watch the news, and it was I swear, it was 10 days behind everything that I was finding to begin with. It'd been filtered and censored and slowly released, and I'm like, hey, wait, I read this literally 10 days ago, and they're just now releasing it on Fox, and I was like, wow, man, I'm so glad I don't watch TV at all, because now it's I can seriously.
More importantly, you can actually reference the work that you're reading on the internet and confirm whether or not the other stories are supporting that claim.
Exactly, quite quickly. Let me see. Let me find out if anybody else has this info too.
Yeah, right. And so you're cross-referencing their report to you, which makes you a better consumer of the news. They can't spoon-feed you the news like they can on TV, because now you can go to any source you want and see what
the government can't even lie to you too well anymore. Now they just stop denying.
And you know what? The thing is, it's scaring them to death because they don't know how to control the internet. And so they're like, oh, we'll tell everybody we're going to do warrantless executive orders to pull their internet files or whatever it is. But there are just too many people getting too much information to be intimidated by those kind of tactics anymore. People are not going to fall for the government's going to send the suits to your front door. The internet is too widely used so we can, affect the outcome of their poor behavior quite often. And we're seeing it now because we're seeing, I think, a greater, exposure of how our senators and House of Representatives or the Congress are doing with our money. We see it and we can read it, and now we are starting to hold them accountable. I think 10 years we're going to have a different plan.
That's exactly what they're fearing right now, is the fact that they're actually being held accountable, because they do a vote now, and you can get it faster than you can on C-SPAN.
Right.
You can just go and get it, I think, on the Thomas website. I use that one. That one is actually faster than the Senate.gov website.
Oh, really?
And you can actually see what's going. Yeah, I'll have to. I can send you some links. Plus, I have some information that I got from one of the guests that has left the chat room as well. He wanted to speak with you, so I've got some information I'll give to you after this.
Okay. Well, the other thing is we can quickly comment on their behavior to their websites too, which is important. They want immediate feedback with our displeasure at their criminal or
and it's all tracked. They can't hide it.
They can't hide it, and we can tell them how we feel because they have their websites up and they're easy to access now too.
Exactly. Uncle Buck walks back in. So I'm bringing him back again. Your mic is on.
Hey, Nick, did you guys, either of you, know how to address the judge? I hate saying your honor because that lifts him up into that English, status. He calls you sir. Can you call him sir?
I have always called him your honor because I've been stuck in a uniform. So every time I go to court, I have a certain protocol that I had to follow. But occasionally I would say Judge, Cadlick or Judge so-and-so and address them informally by judging their name. Yes, because they do have an official title, and if I say Judge Williams, that's appropriate, and it was appropriate in our courtrooms. But, unfortunately, and this is one thing I don't agree with our courtrooms, is the judge has unbridled power, and it's very hard to hold them accountable for poor behavior. So if they start lecturing you and you say, well, I don't agree with you, well, then you're held in contempt of court and you're going to jail for 2 days. And so,
now, where did that come about? I mean, where the heck did these folks get that bench that sits up higher than everybody else? When? Do we know when that happened?
I think it was taken from the original English judicial program with the magistrates that they had, and we followed it so closely. A lot of our common law is actually written, very closely to the English law from that time, and the judges were certainly part of that whole process.
And can you expand on the UCC versus our common law, how the UCC came about?
The UCC, I'm sorry?
Yeah, the Uniform Commercial Court.
Oh, the Uniform Commercial Court. Well, unfortunately, I don't have a lot of experience in that because everything I've done has been in local courtrooms following state law and some occasional federal law when we're doing federal suits under the civil rights violations. So I'm not too familiar with that. It's unfortunately.
Well,
hey, I'm gonna keep you on here, but just because we're starting to run low on time. So One Angry Jew made it back, so he's on here.
All right.
So your mic is live too now.
Yeah, I was just getting ready. I'm going out to dinner, but I overheard something that did catch my ear about what can they do to you. The internet is so big. Is anybody on Blog Talk Radio, you're probably familiar with a group of people that go around, I would call them disruptors. They call themselves the Skype assholes. Have you ever encountered them?
No.
Well, you will, especially if I'm on your show, because they do follow me around. But what they are is a bunch of men in their late 40s, maybe 50s, and they almost with military precision will come into discussions on Blog Talk Radio. That's where I've encountered them. But they do have a website. It's called SkypeAssholes.com, and what they do is they have a chat room that they run 24/7. And anybody with Skype can dial in and listen to them, but they might tear your head off or throw you out or who knows. But on Blog Talk Radio, they go around and they specifically disrupt. I did a fairly extensive discussion with somebody on 911, and they immediately came in to disrupt that discussion as much as they could. They didn't want to debate me. I offered to debate them, and really if they want to take somebody on like me, they'd be foolish. But in a situation where they have an advantage, where they'll come in, all of a sudden 7 of them will be in your room, and they'll all be on your switchboard. They'll all want to talk, and they'll essentially throw ad hominem attacks at people. But my point I'm trying to make is that now they have changed the tactics, and these people, I believe, are absolutely paid for by somebody like the government. I believe that they are NSA or CIA or retired military or somebody. But what's that? Yeah, COINTELPRO, that kind of thing. And somebody, look, I'm not going to, all right, I'm going to toot my own horn a little bit. I'm dangerous. I'm a dangerous person, and I'm going to tell you why. I am capable of putting forth a message with my mouth and my ideas that people understand. I am a flamethrower. I have been causing problems all over Blog Talk Radio, but I'm a patriot. And I'm going to tell you that somebody like me or several people like me can cause lots of people to scratch their heads. And it's those head scratchers that I'm looking for. If somebody's not sure of something that went on, or even this discussion that you're having now that I jumped into about the courts, really, I don't know what the courts are when I walk into them. I see a gold fringe flag flying up there. I don't know who those people are sitting in that courtroom. I only know what they're not. And they're certainly not what I expect them to be. But I guess what I'm trying to say is that the tactics are changing. The way that people are doing things on the internet are changing, and the people who want to fight us, they're changing their tactics too.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess really that it's not so much that they're fighting us, they don't want the truth out there. They don't want people to wake up, and they certainly don't want people scratching their heads.
Right. Well, I think that hopefully if enough of us get together and just continue to put out what we know, and we're going to be able to support one another. They're going to continue to do that, I'm sure. And programs like Nickie's are just incredible. They get out there and people have an opportunity to share ideas, and if they come in and shut it down, we'll find another outlet.
Exactly. Keep the voices going and don't stop. And if we can do it positively and show that it really doesn't take much, communal efforts, and it takes small steps. And at that point, we really do have power. And if you gain control over your life, then, nobody else will have that. And it doesn't take much. And I know it's a little scary to most people because it's a little overwhelming when you look out and see what's out there. But it's really little things like wording, knowing certain words. It just takes one or two. Seriously, it's little things. And people have to respond. It's part of society.
Oh, let me leave you with something that I always find very important. If you don't know what your rights are, you have none.
Boy, that's the truth. That is the truth. And if you don't know what the laws are, you can't use them. And that's so critical. Boy, that's poignant.
Well, people walk into courtrooms every day, and the courtrooms are designed for one thing only: separate you from as much of your money as possible. And if you don't have any money, it's funny because people say to me, "Well, I'm getting divorced. How long do you think it'll take?" I say, "How much money do you have?"
Isn't that the truth?
They said, "What do you mean?" I said, "Well, when your money runs out, they'll give you a divorce decree."
That's right. They'll quit petitioning the court and charging you every time they go back with a new filing. You're absolutely right. Isn't that funny?
When the money is gone on both sides, all the criminals in that courtroom will cease and move on. It's almost like piranha. when there's no flesh left on the bone, they'll move on to another fish.
Yeah, a lot of people don't know. Most of the court is handled by fines and fees. You know, the poor guy that gets in there for, you know, his DUI or whatever it is, it's fines and fees, first and foremost. And then,
and if you can't pay for those, you can get in trouble for fraudulent check writing, even if it has nothing to do with the check. Just for getting something that you know you couldn't afford now. You can go to jail, and then they fee you for, and that makes no sense. I mean, people that already cannot afford basic things that you should have in life are now being told that, hey, your credit card's late, so hey, I'm going to fee you to pay for the money you already didn't have, and make it more expensive to pay for what you will not have ever, and then you get in trouble and go to jail for it.
Yeah, and more importantly, they took a huge bailout that we are going to be paying for years because everybody wanted to pad their pockets. Look at those great bonuses everybody got to have at our cost and our taxpayer dollars, but who knows how long we're going to be paying those for. And yet no one's helping the average person who is indebted to these banks for the next 20 years paying a credit card bill.
Well, are you aware of what's going on in Iceland, what the Icelandic people did?
What'd they do?
Well, it's not put out in the media. I call the media the one-hand clapping, because if the media doesn't cover it, did it really happen?
Right.
But the Icelandic people, when they were bankrupted, started arresting the bankers. And they put out arrest warrants for the bankers, some of them who are living in multi-million-dollar places in London and other cities. And isn't it interesting how quick that Julian Assange was arrested and processed when some of these bankers from Iceland are still free and nobody's even questioning them over in London?
For unprotected sex, not even for rape like they tried to claim. It was just because a condom broke in one case and he didn't wear one in the other, and he refused to get DNA testing.
But look at the American people. The American people now have forgotten. We have no memory as a country. We had a missile that was put into the air out of the ocean 30 miles off our coast. And most people believed the government when it said, oh, well, it's okay. We don't know who it was, but there's nothing to worry.
Please, they knew as soon as they
It was a
came.
jet contrail. That was hilarious.
I thought it was a kid's rocket that you can buy at a local store.
Right. You know, no one believes the government, thankfully.
But how many people have forgotten Julian Assange by now?
I don't know. I hope not too many, because, you know, that is so apparent what they were trying to do there that it's not even, they didn't even cover it up well. We know they're trying to get him back to the U.S. so they can shut him down, and it's
and every woman will be up in arms when they hear the word rape, even though it had nothing to do with anything.
I'm going to tell you who Julian Assange is. Again, this is more words, but Julian Assange is really Lee Harvey Oswald.
Nice. See, that's perfect. I love that.
Well, that's what he is. They're done with him. They don't need him anymore.
Yeah.
So they're going to hang. So now he's going to be, and I watched the YouTube video last night of one of his attorneys in London, and she's having trouble even getting to him.
Yep, they say he's isolated in a isolated area, not a cell or anything, but in an isolated area. They say that he cannot have access to phone calls or internet, so that he can't actually communicate, because that's where his danger to the rest of the world supposedly exists. And the fact that he's been denied bail over something that seriously is insane, and why Interpol was after him for this. And yet, Bradley Manning's in jail, a lowly private who's been held responsible for everything. Well, yeah, that's true, but he's being held. You know, that's the thing about the government.
Not charged.
No.
But let's call Assange what he really is. He's a political prisoner.
Yeah, I think we can all agree with that.
No, I'm sort of developing a coherent plan as I'm saying this to you this afternoon, but I really believe that we have to change our language, and we have to be consistent about it. And we have to start using these terms. When we talk about Julian Assange, he's not been arrested, he's a political prisoner. Because those short 3 words, or 2 words, evoke thought.
Yes.
The other ones don't.
Exactly, and that's what's been confused just with the English language alone. It's already out there to begin with. The words are seriously, our whole speech is almost backwards. And it's kind of scary, especially if you keep going back to the more ancient dialects and even, cuneiform and everything else. It's seriously, the English language was honestly made to disrupt the energy fields around us. It's so wrong right now, and now we're even confusing the simple words that we understood as kids. They don't even, it's just scary. Nobody reads books, and they don't have definitions or write notes next to them except the computer. So nobody actually retains anything, because that's actually how you remember, and now it's just reciting facts to pass a test, and then the next day it's all gone.
No, people have been programmed and conditioned, and that's why I have a 3.5-year-old. He has no Social Security number. How many people believe that he has to have one? But if you walk into a Social Security office and ask somebody there, somebody who knows, they'll quickly tell you that he's not required to have one.
Exactly, you don't. We see it every day. I mean, you have all the people. I'm in Texas, so I see that every day. But hey, I hate to do this. This is always such a great conversation, and
no, I will visit. I will visit you again. I'm finding out the real places on Blog Talk Radio to get information and also to pass it on. I'm going to start my own show tonight. I have been wreaking havoc on Blog Talk Radio in the last couple of weeks, mainly just causing trouble and just getting my name known. And as you can see in the chat room, they got people who are already following me around, and that's okay. Right. As I said, I'm dangerous.
You're a great speaker. You're great to have on the show. I actually enjoyed listening to you.
Thank you.
It was wonderful. And Nickie, are we getting ready to close shop?
We are. Proof's going to come up. We've got survival cooking with Dr. Pepper coming up. So you should learn about your buyout bags and being prepared, and maybe coming up with the alternatives than McDonald's, since we know that won't last long.
That's true. Well, you know what? I want to thank you once again for having me on your show. I just absolutely love it. It's so much fun, and we can get our word out there and hopefully get people to calm down and take a close look at their government officials and their law enforcement and get them straightened out. Let's change the way they do business.
Yeah, let's change it from one small step at a time. Change your community, change yourself, gain control of your life, and then move on, because if you have control, then nobody else does. But,
Right.
All right, Freedomizers. Proof's going to be up with y'all very shortly as soon as I play a song and get us out of here. So I'm going to put everybody on mute. And it was a great show, and I definitely look forward to Frank coming in next time. And I'm going to give you a call right after this to give you some information that I have for you. So everybody hang in there. And again, this has been an awesome Freedomizer show, and check out freedomizerradio.com for the other very talented hosts that we have, and this is a very awesome network, and I always appreciate Blog Talk for the opportunity for us to do that, and of course